We want to live in a place that we can all be proud of. I think the sentiments of today's guest are shared by many of us. Thanks for tuning in to episode 5 of Local Perspectives. I'm your host, Teddy Regis, and today I have the joy of presenting a 2-part discussion with Hyppo Coffee Bar manager, Justin Snavely. Justin is someone who I've found to be incredibly approachable and easy to talk to. Whether our private conversations have involved the Atlanta scene, Prince, or rebranding, I kept thinking repeatedly that he would be a wonderful guest. Justin joins Local Perspectives to share a glimpse of his childhood, how he settled into this quaint city of creatives, and his take on rock music's evolution. We covered a lot of ground in part 1 of our discussion, so hit pause on the day for an enriching local perspective. Justin Snavely. How's it going?
Pretty well.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I'm excited that we got a chance to have a chat and pick your brain a little bit. I've always found you to be a really intriguing, approachable person. So it's always fun to just have an enriching conversation and establish common ground.
Agreed.
But I'm starting to implement improv games in this, so okay. I thought it would be fun to play. Yeah. I thought it would be fun to play one-word story. So basically, I'll start and I'll just say a word, okay. And it'll be like just a back and forth, and we'll basically build a story that way. And then at some point, it'll kind of resolve itself, and it's just interesting to see where it'll go.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Eisenhower.
Cat.
Is.
The.
Most.
Interesting.
Little.
Animal.
To.
Snuggle.
When.
Sad.
The.
Time.
That.
I.
Fell.
Asleep.
After.
Long.
Tiring.
Work.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, we did it.
There's a reason I went with Eisenhower to start. The only pet that I've ever had growing up was a cat. I have a robot vacuum now, and I kind of like jokingly say it's my pet.
Yeah.
But his name was Cameo, and I know your cat's name is Eisenhower, and he's made some appearances on your social media.
Yes.
Tell us about your cat.
It started when I was growing up as a child in East Tennessee. Those were just like the first pets that we had. Mm-hmm. We also had dogs. So I have a reputation with my friends as being kind of like a cat weirdo. But I've always like really loved dogs as well. I just kind of more identify with the weird kind of independence and solitude that cats kind of possess sometimes. But specifically with him, it was just this thing where I was living in a not so nice part of town, and I was moving out. So it was kind of like rough living there. There were some fairly crazy experiences, like with neighbors almost burning down things and like that sort
of.
Like that kind of level of just like, why did I move here again? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess the one good thing that came out of it was that he was just like this stray, mm-hmm. And he would wander up to like the back porch and stuff, and you know, it's just one of those things where like with being busy with work, but then also liking to travel and stuff, it's like, is it really responsible for me to adopt like another animal and
mm-hmm.
stuff? My mom would certainly say no at the time, because the last cat I had ended up being her cat now. So I didn't want to be in a place where I had to pass off like another animal. But it was also just one of those things where like, long story short here, I talked to my friends about it and was just kind of like, well, here are the reasons, here are the pros and cons of everything. And their thought was that on the day that you move out, if the cat's still there, if he still comes to see you, you should take him with you, because that's like some sort of a sign that
that's a good test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, the day that I moved out, he just wandered up to the porch and was just kind of like, "Oh, hey, what's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "Well, I guess you're moving in with me."
Oh,
so,
nice. So wow, I didn't anticipate that he was like traveling from out of state with you, and like that level of history. How long ago was that?
Not so much out of state. It was here in St. Augustine.
Oh, it was here. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, for sure. About 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
So yeah, just more moving like locally, place to place.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I'm imagining like Eisenhower wandering up to the porch in East Tennessee, like
Yeah.
potentially several years ago, and then like, okay, we're moving to Florida,
Yeah.
me and you.
So I do have an animal story about crossing state lines, but it's actually really, really sad. So I don't know if that should be shared.
We'll see if it like circles back again,
Yeah.
if it naturally comes up.
Yeah.
After we have a lot of like happy
Yes.
talk. Yeah, that's super cool. I guess I tended to lean more toward cats, and then I feel like in recent years I've gotten to like hang with my friends' dogs a lot, to the point that people think I have one or maybe two.
Right.
Like, oh no, this dog just happened to show up, and you know, we took a cool picture.
Yeah.
and then she went her way. But let's talk music for a little bit.
Sure.
Who do you think is making waves right now?
Ooh. As someone who grew up listening to a lot of like rock music, I think it's kind of fascinating where rock is. It's definitely not the dominant form of mainstream sounds that it was for so long. A lot of hip hop and R&B have kind of taken the place of like the popular sound in like the pop music landscape. But that being said, I think there are artists out there that are doing things to kind of reshape what rock can be, which is going to kind of give it like some sort of a rebirth. You know, like the best way to move forward is to not necessarily hold on to like some of the old ideals, even if like there's some value in that. And I'm not like super versed in their music. I don't want to paint myself like an expert here, but like what I've heard from Tame Impala to me is really interesting because specifically because they initially their first records were actually built like on a retro sound. So like the songwriting was good and like the guitar riffs were pretty amazing, but it was still like a very conservative approach to like doing like rock music. But within that retro sphere, he's kind of evolved to doing more stuff that is like synth and electronic based, but it still kind of has like that alternative kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it seems like a lot of us are nostalgic for that synth electronica thing right now, and it keeps coming up. Like the Young Step here locally has such a nostalgic vibe for people in our age group who were kind of coming up in maybe the mid to late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And I love to see that. It's like a reminder that you're getting older in a way, when your generation is the one that's like pining for the things that you were exposed to as a kid. But yeah, it's a really comforting sound.
I'm also just fascinated about anything that comes out of Atlanta. Anyone who knows me knows that I spent like a good deal of my life there, and I can't stop talking about it. But like to me, Atlanta is underrated as a music city. And there's a lot of hip hop and R&B that comes out of there, and I love all that stuff. Outkast, of course, probably being like the biggest group ever in terms of like a mainstream like pop culture impact. But even like the stuff with like Migos and all that's coming out of there now. But there's so many other genres that don't get as much recognition that kind of happen in that city, and it's just really, it's an interesting place.
Yeah, the landscape is so saturated. There are things you can do now pretty quickly and easily that were not as possible even like maybe 15, 20 years ago. But I love that you brought up Atlanta, because I feel like I remember taking this trip to Atlanta. I go up there, it seems like every 3 months or 4 months without even really planning to. It just kind of happens because like one of my closest friends is there with his wife, and like there's two couples there that I'm really close to that I just adore and love to spend time with when I'm up there. And a couple of years ago I was between steady like work assignments, and I was really in the full sense of the word like freelancing and just kind of not knowing what jobs I was going to get day to day, but having a lot of work and not having much. And then when early December rolled around, I realized I was probably going to have like a good 5-day stretch or so without work. And I was like, all right, friend of mine's graduating, having a party up there. Let's go. Like, I'm just not going to accept any work for a little bit. So went up there and nice and cold, had a great time as usual. And then it's always hard to come home after those times, you have a good time and everything. And I think it just so happened that when I got home, you had posted like this black and white photo, I think, of like a snowy Atlanta, and it led to this really cool conversation. And my friends were like, "Are you sure you have to leave? Like, it's gonna snow tomorrow. We're making like brownies with like walnuts and all this stuff." And it was just funny. It just led to this interesting conversation, and I remember realizing in that moment that you've had like a strong connection to Atlanta. Yeah. So did you live there at some point?
I did. Pretty much my early 20s, like right when I kind of hit that age. I went, from living in Pensacola, Florida. I moved back to Alabama for like a second. There's like a whole bunch of stories in here.
Yeah, that's
so
okay.
I'll keep this concise.
That's right.
But from moving back to Alabama, a lot of my friends from Pensacola were either from there or wanting to move there. A good portion of them for music and music-related things even. And at that point in my life, I was kind of tired of just like small town living, which is, I guess ironic since I'm in St. Augustine now. But I've always been drawn to big cities, and it was just one of those things of like, well, there's nothing else going on. Why not just go and see what's up there and see what that looks like? My friends and I, we have like an indie rock band that we didn't go too far with it, but we got to play like several shows like in Athens, which is like a music mecca in and of itself as well. So when I was 22 is when I moved up there, and then when I was in 2014, year 34 of my life was when I left and moved back here to St. Augustine.
Neat. So, yeah, that's cool. I have a lot of respect for people who are able to take a dream like that and just kind of go for it. There's not always a lot of certainty involved in transporting yourself somewhere, especially from like a small town feel to a place like Atlanta that's just, has so much going on. But it's a place that I find myself drawn to a lot. I don't know if I'm always asked by my friends up there, would you ever move up here? What are you waiting for already? Like we could just make this like fun weekend, a thing forever. But I think I came to the realization, coming from up north and being obsessed with moving back, from like the ages of like 17 to 21, and then graduating into the recession and realizing like, okay, maybe I need to be realistic, and living somewhere and like visiting occasionally are so different. And I think I think coming to that realization has helped me out a lot, just in not expecting my circumstances to be the end all be all in my happiness. Like, you know what, St. Augustine's really cool. It's got like almost like a European flair when you're downtown, never gets old. But there are a lot of places that I love to visit, and I never thought I'd say this, but I love having St. Augustine as a home base. Sure. Like it came a long way from being obsessed with moving back to New York, like right after college. No matter what, I have to do it. And I would like lay in bed, paralyzed with anxiety, like, oh my gosh, I'm 19. Like I have to make this happen in 2 years. And like, how am I going to do that? Like, what am I? I'm like, all right, don't do that to yourself.
the crazy pressure that we put on ourselves to hit those goals and stuff. We've talked about the connection between Atlanta and St. Augustine.
I believe so.
Yeah. Like that's something that's fascinating. Is there's just like this weird connection between like the two places, like people up there who come down here and vice versa and stuff. They're like diners in the metro area that have like murals in them, and like St. Augustine is like a part of some of those murals, and it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. It's a very accessible spot, like it's a 1 hour flight, 6-hour drive, whatever. I take the bus a lot when I go, Nice,
and I like get a coloring book and download like a Netflix movie, and I'm pretty good to go. A neck pillow, might like really zonk out for an hour or whatever, and dirt cheap to do it. So how were you first introduced to St. Augustine, being a Tennessee kid?
Sure. So most of my extended family lives here, at least on my mom's side. And we would come to visit, I'm sure, basically we moved from Knoxville, Tennessee when I was about 5 years old.
Okay.
You know, like a lot of people from that era, like my parents had split up, and mom just wanted to come home, you know. So yeah, we came back here, and I mean they moved around a lot when they were kids too, unfortunately, and just kind of ultimately settled in St. Augustine. I think my favorite story is that my grandfather, his wife, my grandmother, basically was like, we're going to give you one more. You can move us to one more place, but that's it. We're not moving anymore. Okay. And that place just happened to be St. Augustine. So yeah, so when my parents split up, we came back down here so that, like, you know, the family could help her, like, raise me and that sort of thing. But it was a very idyllic time in my life. It's interesting living back here now because there are all these, like, bits of memory and just, like, really good days I remember, but then like driving around in the course of like living here again, like realizing like, oh, that shop on that corner, that's where we were that day, and that's like a really fond memory. So yeah, sometimes like it can be a struggle to live here in the sense that like I just miss living in a big urban environment. But then it's also the comforts of home make it really hard to want to say goodbye again. You know, plus like the friendships I've made here.
It's an interesting dichotomy. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those like nostalgic drives and like tying a memory to different locations, and that's a really cool perspective to have. So what were you like as a kid?
That's a good question. Pretty adventurous, I would say. Except for roller coasters, I wasn't really afraid of much. I think I had like kind of like a flair for the dramatic. I loved being in like plays and stuff like that. I was definitely the kid who like once my family got like a video camera, it's like, all right guys, we got to get some costumes together. We got to like make like some short films or some music videos or something, you know. Yeah, I loved, kind of nerdy for sure. I loved like video games and comic books, but then I also loved sports. So like, my cousins and I talk about this because we had very similar upbringings, but we had like this perfect balance of we could do like the indoor introvert thing, and like we'd have our books and our TV shows and our video games, but then we loved exploring. We all lived in Alabama together at one point, and we had like this amazing backyard that led to like an even more amazing like forest, and like the highlight of the day was like to be out in that forest because it was just that first taste of independence too, of like finding and making a world that's yours. So I was always drawn to that as a kid. I liked being kind of independent and being given the freedom to just explore and fill things out for myself.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it seems like you were multi-dimensional. You know, like there are different lanes that you can like go in and out of. I feel like a lot of the stories we hear about people who have done amazing things in a variety of fields, like especially entertainment, it seems like one of the common threads is like, yeah, we used to love to like make these like weird movies and like dress up and like, you know, all that. That like that sense of wonder is really cool. For sure. So now that you have put down roots in St. Augustine and you've really kind of immersed yourself in the community, met people, made friends, like you said, I always like to hear people's take on this like phenomenon that I keep hearing about here. And if you have like an anecdote, that's cool too. But like this like signature spirit of collaboration over competition that seems to really be a thing here. Do you notice that?
Oh, for sure. It's what makes living here a lot of times so fun and interesting. Because like you go other places and it is a little more cutthroat, where it's less about like, hey, let's get together and just do something, and more about like, you know, I want to be the person doing the thing. You know, so it's exciting. I know. Like with my friends, some of our ideas haven't come to fruition yet, but like a constant topic of conversation is like, oh, what if we did this thing? You know, like what if like we put this together and this together, and then we just did this and just put it out there, just to do it, not for any like personal gain or like any like recognition, but just to say like we did something. You know, but that's a very unique aspect to St. Augustine. I feel like you're of that spirit as well.
Thanks.
And it's
Same
nice
here.
to have people, like facilitate that, because that's the thing. It's not even just like a small group or a collective. It's like anyone who seems to be involved with creativity in this town, like wants to connect and do things. Maybe it's like a civic pride thing, like we want to all live in a place that like we can all be proud of, and that people visiting can see something special in.
Right.
And I think the arts and creativity like play like a big part in that. Like you know, you think about places like Charleston and Savannah, and in some ways St. Augustine is like a little brother like to those places, but there's like this hunger too to be seen on the same level of like, you know, if you're talking about like the most unique southern cities, like St. Augustine wants to be on that short list, and for those of us who live here, like we are, we know like this place is unique and special. But a lot of the arts and the creativity, and that doesn't even necessarily mean like just music or just photography or just film. I mean, like the food industry here, they might say they're more craftsmen than they are artists, but there's just so much happening that's interesting, and there's a lot of cross-pollination.
Yeah.
And all it does is just enrich the experience of life here and make us all just have something unique.
Thanks for tuning in. That does it for part 1, but there's more to come. I can't wait to share the rest of our chat. I want to thank Justin for taking time out of his busy schedule to hang out and be part of this project. As always, I owe a big thank you to Bill Harker of HH Films for his lighting and filming expertise. He's one in a million. And thanks, friends, for your support and viewership. I love you, and I'll catch up with you during part 2. Till next time.